Hello and welcome to the Malika Writes channel. My name is Malika Writes and today we are going to be talking about Solomon Kane and Stoicism. So Solomon Kane is a character written by Robert Howard, the author of Conan the Barbarian. Kane is a Puritan determined to bring justice to an unfair world he's the sort of character who is very proactive in the way that he chooses to bring justice. So we have this lovely tension between morals and also how he exercises violence. And I think Robert Howard does this really well. So of all the characteristics of Kane, his stoicism is probably the most striking. In The Footfalls Within, one of the tales of Solomon Kane, Kane is aware of the danger that's posed long before most of the other characters, and this is because of his awareness of his inner world, and because of the fact that he's so in tune with himself, he's able to actually withstand the terror that issues forth from the cursed tomb. He obeyed his mind more, of course, is a very rational and sort of practical character, but his heart is not ignored and he is in tune with his emotions and inner workings of his soul, and he feels things a lot more profoundly. The advantage of the omniscient narrator of the Solomon Kane stories is that we get insight into what Solomon Kane is thinking and feeling as the action is happening. And we're able to see this from a very objective standpoint, which is the benefit of the omniscient narrator. So we see that he feels things a lot more profoundly than the other characters. We also see that while it is not good to be ruled by the heart, as some of the other characters are, but it's folly to ignore it and to discard it, which is what one of the other characters in the story does and ends up dying first. Things that cannot be determined by or comprehended immediately by the mind are usually felt by the heart, and the tools of the heart are intuition and instinct. So the laws of Stoicism, such as they were conceived in the early days by its first practitioners, are as followed. Recognize what you can and cannot control. Determine your reaction to a situation. Ignore people dominated by their own negative emotions. Master yourself and aim to be virtuous, and learn to move on. In Solomon Kane, we find all these laws obeyed, and this is because of the hardship that Solomon Kane has to endure in order for him to live the life that he lives. So the Stoic motto is virtue is sufficient for happiness, and the character of Solomon Kane actually exemplifies this. He refuses chieftain positions, kingships, rewards, and all sorts of leadership positions, and actually encourages those who are in bondage to free themselves. So he's not going in as this almighty savior. He's following a personal calling, and that's one of the charming things about the book, is that he's not going in with this, oh, I am the savior of the world mentality. He's very much on a personal quest, and it adds an extra dimension to these stories that are very action orientated. So he doesn't seek riches or fame, but he seeks to right wrongs. He's a virtuous wanderer, and his treasures are his valiant deeds and not trinkets that will rust and decay. Kane rightly recognizes that real treasures are virtues shared with others. So I think it's important to address one of the main criticisms of Stoicism, which is that it makes people suppress their emotions. And I think it's important to note that Stoicism is not the absence of fear or negative emotion. The absence of fear is foolish and not for the wise. In the presence of danger, if fear is not present, then the severity of the situation has not been understood. However, the trick is not to be overcome by fear. One of my favourite stories in the Solomon Kane series is The Footfalls Within, which perfectly exemplifies the power of fear, how the different characters interact with fear, and how Solomon Kane stands out from that. It's also a microcosm of the larger work in terms of how Solomon Kane's character not just develops, but how it plays out within these adventure stories. We see his philosophical side when he addresses the fact that he is just one speck in this grand tapestry, and that's one of the really amazing things about the Solomon Kane stories. Despite being a character that is worthy of praise, he remains quite humble. Despite being offered all these temptations, he's been offered kingships, chieftaincies, he's been offered so many rewards, but he doesn't take them. He doesn't come in with a superiority complex, demanding the worship of people, even if he has just saved them. He actually encourages them to be free. He encourages people to take their own liberties, to be individuals rather than just nameless figures. And that's one of the charming things about the Solomon Kane stories. Permeating throughout the entirety of the Solomon Kane stories is this idea that happiness can be derived from virtuous acts, from acts of valor. And the Solomon Kane stories really center around this idea. In all of the stories, we have a recurring theme of Solomon Kane jumping headfirst into a particular situation in order to save somebody, or being caught in a situation as a result of trying to save somebody. And his character shines through. He does not do things for financial or material rewards. He does it by the virtue. He does it just because it's the right thing to do, which is essentially the backbone of Stoicism, that one can find happiness in duty, and that is the essence of the Solomon Kane stories. In the Solomon Kane stories, we can find the four virtues of Stoicism, which are wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation. In the way that Solomon Kane lives his life throughout the different stories, we see that he is a frugal person. He does not live with a lot of luxuries. In fact, one of the only items of gold that he has is a magical staff that actually aids him. Wisdom, he thinks before he jumps into action. So in one of the tales, before he actually engages in battle, he looks at his weapons, considers which ones he will need for the particular environment that he's in. So he's very aware of his environment. He's knowledgeable about not just his weaponry, but the environment he's living in, also the type of people that he will encounter. Courage, a great deal of courage is shown. Solomon Kane is a character who is not devoid of fear, yet he still overcomes his fear time and time again, which is what makes him an admirable character. And justice, that's his whole calling. His calling is about adhering to a particular code, bringing justice to the world and making it a fairer place. It's a very noble calling, and some would ask, who is Solomon Kane, or who are you to want justice in the world or to feel like you can make such a difference? And Solomon Kane's mentality is that justice is something that the world needs. It's something that is lacking in the world, and all those who have the courage to answer the call may answer it. And this is the mentality that he uses when he encourages slaves to break free from their masters, when he sets people free and encourages them to go back to where they came from and to live their lives now for themselves, but not just selfishly, but live virtuously for themselves, because the ideology behind Solomon Kane is that happiness can be found in virtue. So thank you to everyone who recommended the Solomon Kane stories to me. They were phenomenally written. They were exciting to read. The words just sort of jump off the page. You find your eyes just running across the page as you're reading, and you keep up with the action, because it really encourages this very physical reaction. You find your heart beating as certain action scenes are taking place. It's very vivid. I definitely agree with Stephen King's commentary about the Solomon Kane stories. The words do literally spark off the page and they resonate with you. They're stories that I would really recommend. They follow the masculine story quite well, but as I've covered that on my channel before, I didn't want to just do like a repeat video of what I've already said. But I think bringing attention to the Stoic element of Solomon Kane's character and how the Stoic philosophy underpins the entire work might be useful to you. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it's giving you something to think about. I hope that this video will encourage you to watch some of my other videos where I've talked about masculinity, I've talked about femininity and other topics to do with writing and just books in general. So thank you so much for watching. This has been the Malika Writes channel. Have a lovely day.